Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're calling in from around the world. My name is Sandy Hart, and I am the director of the Charter for Compassion Women and Girls sector. Before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping and draw your attention to the screen. If you are coming in by way of your computer, float your mouse down to the bottom of the screen where you'll see a little chat box, a little bubble there. Go ahead and take just a moment, please, and drop in from wherever you're calling in. We want to know where you're calling in from. Hi from Helsinki. Hello from the Netherlands. Hello from Milwaukee. Just say hi to us so we can know where you are. This call is recorded, and because you registered for this call, you're going to receive a copy of it and any other links or things that are mentioned here. So don't worry about taking copious notes.
Oh, great. They're popping in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Come on in. Thanks. Following the first part of our call, we will then bring you in to our call where you can exchange with our speakers and Joan and also with one another. First, a little bit about who we are here at the Charter, and then I'll turn the call over to Joan, and then we can get into our really exciting and important call today. We are a sector of the Charter for Compassion International. It was founded as a result of the first TED Prize, which was won by Karen Armstrong for her compelling argument that compassion is a clear, dynamic, and luminous force for our polarized world. We're now a thriving network of more than 406 cities and regions of compassion, more than 200 partners organized into 12 sectors, and in 54 countries around the world. Our vision is to improve Charter women and girls, being one of those 12 partners. Our vision is to improve and advance solutions to all issues that impact women and children. And we do that along with our partners. We just birthed our next gen task force, and also to address all forms of violence against women and children, the Committee on a Partnership for a Safe and Sacred Now. Your ambassadors are the real leaders here. Joan Marie, who joined us as an ambassador, who dreamt of and designed and is producing this series. And she is now the co-director of the Women and Girls sector in the Sacramento and Capital Region area of California. And for more about Joan and our other regional directors, please visit our website at charterforcompassion.org under partners. You will find women and girls. It's my delight now to hand this call over to Joan.
Thank you, Sandy. You're awesome, and it's very exciting to say that Sacramento is now a compassionate. They've agreed to become a compassionate city. So now another whole level of work begins in the community, defining what that means for us. So we're really excited about that.
Congratulations to you and to Brenda, who you'll hear in a moment, has a lot to do with that. So let me just, a round of applause for both of you.
Yeah, yay. So hello, everyone. And the year 2020 is a very special time that is just around the corner for us, and it marks some significant dates where it will be 100 years since the 19th Amendment, which allowed women the right to vote, and 150 years since the Mother's Day Peace Proclamation, which was right after the Civil War. And I believe Julia Ward Howe kind of created a template asking women to come together of all nationalities to talk of the greater needs of peace. It's also a campaign to bring awareness and acknowledge the possibilities of including an 18th sustainable goal of self-examination and personal responsibility. So through this path, we can midwife ourselves into a higher purpose as humans. So we're here to uplift each other, to disrupt untruth and reclaim what's been made profane and return it to its sacred place. So I'm completely honored to be a part of that. So with that awareness, I'd really like to invite all of you. It's really exciting. I'm seeing Vancouver, Canada, San Diego, California, Fraser Park, California, Nova Scotia, Tucson, Louisiana, Houston. This is totally exciting. So even though we're all on different parts of the planet, let's join together in breath, because we're coming into a special call that is going to expand our knowledge base and also unify us in a unique way. So let's just take a deep breath, inhaling, and slowly exhaling. And one more. Bringing us into the present moment, allowing all else to subside. And I'd like to introduce our speakers. So we're starting with Brenda Astara Gustin. She's a PhD. She co-created the Sudbury School for Children to create from the innate desire to grow into responsible citizens. Brenda continues assisting adults to do the same at the Radiant Health Center, and she's the Vice President of Mercy Springs Foundation. She helps co-create the California Vision 2020 conference, which is coming again this year, September 20th through 22nd. And she is also a Braveheart sister and does work with that. And Sacred Geometry provides an opportunity to learn about the nature within us all. So this is a really valuable tool for us. And Elaine Grohmann is the author of 2 books, The Angels and Me, Experiences of Receiving and Sharing Divine Information, and Spirit Awakening, Wisdom for Life and Living. And both of these are available on Amazon for you. She teaches about sacred geometry, energy medicine, intuition, and the Native American body of wisdom known as medicine wheels, a multi-layered body of knowledge known as spherical mathematics, an earth science that helps us to have a deeper appreciation for our place in creation and how to open up to our human potentials. So that's a whole lot of information. So let's go ahead and again, take a breath that we're coming into a unified field and welcome these 2 people that have come to share their wisdom and knowledge with us. So let's go ahead and inhale. And feel from your heart expanding an openness and welcomeness to both Brenda and Elaine as they open their hearts and their minds to share their knowledge. So thank you, everyone. Elaine, I'd like to start with you first, if that's okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you, Joan, for this opportunity, and thank you for being a co-presenter, Brenda, and of course, Sandy Hart for being this incredible glue that brings all of this together for the Charter for Compassion. Yes. And all of the people who are on the call who are willing to open themselves to new things that seem to be new but are actually ancient. What I'd like to talk about is my relationship to sacred geometry as it relates to our physical world and then therefore ourselves. So just to help you define what sacred geometry means, the word sacred, many people need to really look at etymology and linguistics to understand that sacred is often in our vernacular mistaken for religious, but sacred actually is synonymous with the word secret, which means that it's not necessarily intentionally kept from us, but often things that are hidden in plain sight. So things that are available to us, but we may not be aware of. The term geometry literally means the measure of the earth. So the secrets that the earth holds within us, or within it, and therefore within us, because we are part of this beautiful web of life. In relation to the work that I do in what's called sacred geometry and energy medicine, we have, we have this challenge right now, as we always have in humanity, that when we have divided ourselves in our minds and our spirits and our bodies and our emotions, we get fragmented. And there's ways for us to be more completely in concert, in communication, in tactile engagement with the living earth. So ancient minds have studied the patterns that are inherent in nature. So essentially, sacred geometry is the patterns that are inherent in nature. All of geometry is how our world is created. So from the sphere, of which most people are aware, the sun being that is the first thing that we would see every morning, is the sphere called our sun. And also our planet is a spherical being. So there is a term called spherical mathematics, which means that there's a building of one sphere around another, around another, around another, that begins to not be separate, but intersupporting and interrelating to other parts. So over the years, in the past 20 years that I've been teaching this work and doing this work, I've had the great opportunity to literally be shown by creation the power behind this ancient knowledge. So standing in doing sacred ceremony in the stones of Stonehenge, or literally standing in a crop circle as it's forming. Not only being in one that it's already formed, but as it's forming. In being understanding that all religions in particular would employ the terms of sacred geometry to intend to try to accentuate the power that they were trying to hold, which was kind of an extrapolation, although not with great integrity often, to harness the power of the earth to alter people. So sacred geometry, in how I have learned it and have been privileged to learn it, is multi-layered. But really what it is about is our connection to everything that exists. Not just in the outside world, which we often look at for answers, but within ourselves, where the answers always lie. And we will be talking about numerals, what the meaning of different numbers are. From my frame of reference, it comes from what is called the medicine wheels, which is the actual language of mathematics. So we often think of mathematics as a form of computation, but it is much more than that. It is actually a language, which was then created to help to support who we are in relation to everything that exists. And many people do not realize that the zero was something that has been misrepresented, and it was discovered actually by the Mayans. It was discovered, it was not invented. And the zero does not mean nothing. The zero means everything. So there is a great depth of understanding that we need to relearn so that we can find the ways to help ourselves be on the solid ground, literally.
Thank you. So are you saying, like, just a very simplified example would be the number 10 would be kind of an embracing of all the previous numbers? So it's the all?
The 10 represents one movement around a wheel.
Okay.
So the wheel within itself has 1 through 10 numbers, but 1 being the completion of an entire circle or a cycle of time, or a cycle of understanding, or a broadening of understanding. So there's really only derivatives of 10. So there could be 2 10s, which would be 20, or 3 10s, which would be 30, 3 cycles around a circle, which has greater depth in terms of our relationship to time, our relationship to the past, the present, the future, the now, and within ourselves, so that we can move out of the limited understanding that we have been taught about ourselves to be the powerful beings we actually are.
That's excellent. Thank you, Elaine. That was really helpful. And I think that's one of my intentions with these webinars, is to tap into people's wisdom of how things have really been, I call it being made profane, that we've lost the deeper understandings of things, and so we're working on a very surface level. And so these understandings are invitations to go much deeper on how we actually live our lives.
Yes. And I think what is so vital in this time, and I'm sure that Brenda will agree, is that we have to resist the desire to be angry about things, and instead
yeah.
of maybe not being consider it profane, maybe consider it something that has been withdrawn, so that we can find it and seek it in a different way without labeling it good, bad, or indifferent. Now that we know, we can begin to explore those possibilities in a new way.
Well, and thank you for bringing that up. When I use the word profane, and I think that that's going to need to be part of our conversation, is how we use words.
Yes.
The way I say it is, I mean it being taken out of the sacred.
I understand.
And so I don't see it as a negative, but I think that that's a really good point, that we're in a time where the way we communicate is changing.
Absolutely.
And so we're in a dance, and I think that's why the element of compassion is so important in everything we do on this way forward, because we're learning a whole new way, and there'll be glitches, and we need to open our hearts and be compassionate with everyone, including ourselves, in this process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Elaine. I'm going to ask, because we're going to be interacting and having conversation with both Elaine and Brenda from different perspectives coming in, I'd love for Brenda to share a little bit about her background in how she's working with sacred geometry. And right before I do that, I want to invite people. On the side is the chat, and if you have questions, we will at 9 to 9:30 we'll have open conversation. But if there's something specific that you want to write down, be sure and put that there so it can be addressed. So thank you. How about you, Brenda?
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you to Joan, Elaine, and Sandy, and especially to Charter for Compassion. Since I've been involved, Joan invited me in January 2017. I've met amazing people, and we have really, with the women and girls sector, we're affecting great change in our local communities. And I really appreciate this opportunity. So for me, what I do with sacred geometry is not only do I paint them, and this painting behind is what's called a Sri Yantra. And so yantras are a part of sacred geometry, which have been studied and meditated upon and created, thousands of years ago. What I'd like us to do, though, right now is, because we're focused on compassion, I want us to tune in to that inner compass within all of us. As Elaine was saying, everything is inside of us. And we're saying in the earth, the secrets of the earth are inside the earth, and they're also inside of us, because we are created as a microcosm of the planet Earth. We have all of those elements within us. And so I invite you to close your eyes and just tune in to your breath and really feel your belly. Ensure that you're really seated down into that root area, that you feel the chair that you're sitting on. And of course, if you're driving, please don't do this. And allow a nice deep belly breath, and really fill yourself up, and recognize that we must receive first before we can ever give. And where are we receiving from? That's the big question, right? Well, we have this life force within us. And when we breathe into it and allow ourselves to receive, then we're connected with the universe, the one song that's going on within each of us. And then I invite you to tune into the inner compass within yourself. So if you lift the gaze of your eyes up gently, I want you to imagine that you are receiving the light of the sun coming in from the east. It's rising up. And as you breathe into that sunlight, you're breathing it back to the back of your head, actually. So this pituitary gland, right, and behind the point between the eyebrows here in the neocortex, is that eastern star. And it lights up the west in the back, which is that lunar of the pineal gland. And as we balance those two, there's a system right in the center of us that is our axis point. Just like the planet has her own north and south pole, so do we. Our north pole is the top, south pole is the perineum. So recognize that within each of us is this inner compass. So the point being is that we can orient ourselves in that center of being and recognize what's our part in any situation. So when Joan was talking about self-examination and responsibility, I like to take the word responsibility and turn it into able to respond. And how can I respond to something compassionately from within my own self to the outer world? So that's working with the sacred geometry within us, that inner compass. The news. What's the news coming from inside of us? The north, the east, the west, and the south. Okay, what's the good news that we get to spread throughout the world as we balance our inner compass and we stay in that very center? So in sacred geometry, as Elaine was talking about, I liked hearing her say about the circles. If you take a circle and you look at this particular circle, you see one side of it. If I open it up, you see two. And so this is the sacred form of all things. And we have these sacred geometry formations that come from the single cell into the double, and then they eventually form what's called the seed of life or the flower of life. And these are what yantras stem from. This is what we get to look at, how we create, and there's many geometrics around us. So I'd like to pause, Elaine. I know you have a wealth of knowledge in this, and I want to have this be an exchange. Because although I work with yantras a little bit more, this totally relates to what you do.
Absolutely.
With sacred geometry.
Yeah, because my focus is really on energy healing, sacred geometry and energy healing, which is a way of bringing energy into the body so the body can assimilate it, use that energy so that it can exponentially allow healing to begin. So just as Brenda was showing those illustrations of the various forms that spheres will create, if we think about our own biological function and our own cellular division, that is all the continuation of cell division, which is all geometry. All of our molecular structure is based on hexagons and various what's called Platonic solids. So the Platonic solids are various shapes that are part of sacred geometry. They're called Platonic solids because they were named by Plato. So it's the tetrahedron, the cube, the isosahedron, the dodecahedron, and the other one's escaping me at the moment, but there's 5 of them. But what we recognize is, and what great minds for centuries studied these patterns and understood that what they were watching was how creation created. So it was, they were not inventing anything, they were observing everything. So from the way that a flower unfurls from the earth, the way the sun moves across the sky, the way there's ellipses, to the way water moves, everything is a geometric pattern. So in terms of the work that I do, and I've been privileged to work with people in medicine and medical schools, to help them to understand what is the fundamental thing that's happening if you're trying to help the body receive what it needs. And our body has what's called an etheric template, which is essentially a particular pattern, all geometry, that allows our body to differentiate organ systems, to differentiate how one system works with another, because we are one whole. So we have to be able to intake food. We need to be able to have it assimilate. But if there's any disturbance in energy, then we know what happens. We have, at the very least, we have anxiety and stress. At the very worst, we have disease and death. So I'm coming at it from a different perspective, but just as important, because as what Brenda's saying is the yantras were used to help to open the mind. So
Yes.
we could understand what are we even thinking, and then get information.
Well, and I think that's a really important point, because we don't always think that because we're here in physical form that, there's realms beyond this linear realm that we're in, and we're much more than physical beings. And that I always like thinking that our physical body is the densest aspect of who we are. And so that we're dense, again, we're using language that can apply to also how expanded the consciousness is. And so that's really important as well. So I had an experience with, as an artist, I had for 5 years done the Day of Peace events, and I did a collective collage of images from all 5 years. And in doing that, I was guided by spirit to place the fruit of life on that. And I've heard of the flower of life. I hadn't heard of the fruit of life. And it's 13 circles. And so, and it exists in everything, like you're saying. And so I think that that's a really interesting aspect, to know that who we are and what we do can actually nourish ourselves and be nourishment for others. So
Absolutely.
So thank you. So Elaine, in your journeys, what is one of the most significant things, like if you just had a few moments to really share with a being about how sacred geometry could really help guide them and be another valuable tool in their toolbox, what would you say?
Well, I would say, first of all, we have to understand, as Brenda was saying, we live on the sphere called Mother Earth. And Mother Earth has around her what is called a torus, which is another level of geometry, which is the magnetic field around the Earth. So in the microcosm and macrocosm, we have our physical body, but we also have our torus called the human aura. So one of the things that's the most significant, I think, is we need information. Information is energy. Energy provides information. So the most important thing for us, I believe, as human beings is to become immediately connected to the earth by allowing the energy to move up into the body from the feet, never ever from the crown. Because you want to be able to build the structure of the physical body, which is the vehicle for spirit to be made manifest. So the density, as you use that term, is really matter. Our body is matter. Mm-hmm. Our matter matters. But we have to be able to understand how do we use what is available to us in the natural world, which is all geometry, which is all energy, so that we can literally have all of our circuitry lit up. So our circuitry is the geometry of ourselves. And then by extension, we are in this matrix of energy of which we are living in. So when we can be connected by allowing the chakras and the arches of the feet, so if I can very quickly just suggest, and you can do this and should do this throughout your day, you never ground yourself once. You would, throughout your day, you would imagine the most important chakras in the arch are in the arches of your feet. So if you can imagine, your feet are like two prongs of a plug that just plugged into the earth. You do not need to tell that energy how to move. It knows how to move. So then it begins to accentuate and have all of the energy moving through your body in your circuitry, again, your sacred geometry, so that everything is getting what it needs so that you can actually be a contributing human being, not one that is deficient in body, mind, spirit, or emotions. So that is a big problem that has been taken from us by many doctrines, from many religions, many ethnicities, many cultures that have separated us from ourselves. So I think that that's one of the most important things that I would say is ground yourself so you can start to feel your own stability of your physical structure, which is all geometry.
Thank you. That's excellent. Brenda, I'm going to ask you. We have Brescia is asking, saying that she resonates with the spiral, and she'd like you to speak about the symbol of the spiral.
Yeah, the symbol of the spiral, basically, what I was hearing Elaine talk about was, the circle. And if we think about concentric circles, we don't see that they're connected. We see this. But when we open this up, we see that there's actually a spiral taking place. So if you take a look at also the geometry of the chakra system, we also have that same thing. So these are the symbols of the chakras. But what happens here is there's a spiral dynamic taking place. And it starts at the brain here up in what's called the Ajna chakra. And I'm going to show you a design of that. It's got the two petals and then the center, and it's got other yantras in here. But the two petals on the side, which represent the sun and the moon, connect coming all the way down on the right side is called the pingula. Left side going up as we inhale, we expand, like kind of leading into what Elaine was talking about, was we're breathing in up what's called the Ida and up to here and then back. When these two are balanced, it actually goes right down center of this column where our prana, our life force, our chi flows. And it goes down. That's the bigger movement, but there's the smaller movement where they go around and we create the spiral. And so you see it in symbology such as this.
The caduceus.
The caduceus, which is, American Medical Association.
Which was stolen by the American Medical Association.
Yeah,
it's not their invention.
Borrowed.
Been utilized,
stolen,
I would say.
Stolen.
Really, it's all in good order. But so the spiral, even if we look at a tree, there's an interconnectedness, which is the space. And it's the space between. And we forget about that. We tend to focus on the matter. And it's about recognizing that we have a repulsion and attraction of polarities going on all the time as we breathe in. We expand inside, but in a way we're also contracting from the outside world. Then we're exhaling and the body contracts a little bit, but we expand into the outside. So when we start to think about these things, we see this interrelationship that's going on. And so what I wanted to quickly explain about a yantra is this is, the sacred design that is considered to be Satchitananda, which is truth, consciousness, bliss. And the story of creation, one of them, and they match in many traditions, is that Source loved itself so much that it wanted to duplicate itself. So it did. And so it has these two together, which form the human, basically. And if you take this and you take a look at this, we created time. And so it's in our time, in our bodies. Take a look at how we're created like this. And so we're always working together with that. But a lot of people remain separate. They're all up here, like Elaine was saying. The energy comes, it's spiritual, it's only coming down, it gets stopped. And then some people are more physical, more dense, they're connected to that. Yet we talk all the time about how do we get into our heart. The thing is, we think we're in the heart a lot, but we're not really in our heart. So there's been challenge, Elaine, you talk about bringing the energy up from the earth, from the feet and the chakras, which are really important. But if a person has a root chakra that is so tight that they can't bring it all the way up, then they basically stay seated in the physical. And they don't really come together in the spiritual. Then we've got the people that are really connected up above, and they can't really bring it back down. And this is called, right at the very center, it's the Bindu. It's the center, the heart of creation. We've come to think it's our heart. It's not our physical heart. It's exactly right in the center, right here, beneath what's considered to be Venus and Mars inside of us. We have the galaxy in here. What's between Venus and Mars in the galaxy? Earth. So this is considered to be the second knot in Eastern tradition. In Egyptian, it's called a half step. And what happens is when we open that half step is everything comes together and we form this, the star, which is the symbol of the heart in sacred geometry. So we actually seat into our heart, and we breathe.
The star that looks like the Star of David, and
Yes.
the masculine and feminine coming together. So yeah, and I think that's part of our human form, to bring heaven onto earth through us. So thank you, Brenda, and I'd love to hear Elaine's perspective as well.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to briefly, from my perspective, about a spiral. A spiral is not exactly the same as two circles together, because it's what's called a Fibonacci spiral. So it does mathematically expound. So it goes out in, so they understood that the human ear is exactly a Fibonacci spiral. A nautilus shell is a spiral. A wave will only break at the perfect angle or the perfect geometry of a spiral. And of course, our DNA structure is a spiral. So it is moving energy from a positive neutral to negative to create what's called a current. Right. So in terms of the work that I'm doing with the body, is to understand that we are physiological beings that need to have the strength of the earth come into us. So as energy comes up into the body, our blood is made in our bones. So if we don't have healthy bones, then we have essentially no health at all. So before energy gets anywhere near the root chakra, and thus being able to go through the full spectrum of light, it needs to be able to manufacture healthy blood. So what's referred to as the long bones, the tibia and the fibula and the femur and then the pelvic girdle, are the largest producers of the carrier of nutrients, oxygen, and has the capacity to remove waste from the body. Then as it's like, again, like our feet are like two prongs of a plug plugging into the earth. This doesn't make what Brenda's saying wrong. It's just a different perspective, because our understanding and indigenous understanding, and the medicine wheels, by the way, are 10,000 years old. And so there's a great deal of understanding that as we have a connection to the physical earth, energy moving through the earth, every mineral, cell, everything that our body is made of is actually in the body of the earth. So the iron within the earth can speak to the iron within our blood. The air that we breathe is a being. It's not just a thing. It is a medicine, okay? So what we have an opportunity to understand is great ones like, you know, the Buddha, Jesus, many people who were being loving, compassionate individuals. They had their full spectrum of light moving through their body. So it's not just coincidental that the chakras have colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. That is the spectrum of light that is required for the body to maintain its structure in any given part. So, and then by way of that full activation, meaning the full energy moving through all of that, we actually create white light. So many people, unfortunately, are mistakenly taught that they need to surround themselves in white light, which is a really bad idea. Because it is like, if you're surrounding yourself but you have no stability, you can become a target in many ways. So you want to have actual stability within you, coming out of you, thus creating a stable aura, which is a sphere. Then your sphere, I like to refer to my aura as my sphere of influence. I am responsible for my sphere of influence. I am responsible for what I present, how I present myself, and how I interact with this world. I am responsible for that. So I am very conscious of making sure that I am as grounded as possible. And I've seen evidence of someone who had, let's say, a hematological problem, which would be leukemia. By receiving energy work in their bones, their leukemia went away. So there are so many layers of what we're speaking about, and this is an enormous, enormous subject. But I appreciate so much, Brenda, what you're saying is because these Sri Yantras, and you may speak to this, is just meditating on these symbols would open parts of our brain that have been dormant.
They do.
So there's, again, this secretness. And most people don't realize in 39 AD, the Emperor Thelodious made it illegal to study sacred geometry. They could kill you if they understood that you were studying these things, because they understood it gave humans an innate power within themselves. When they understood they are a part of creation, they're not a subject of creation.
Yeah.
They're a part of it.
Well, and there was a time in history where consciousness really shifted, that they were to conquer nature.
Right.
And that was part of how medicine, traditional, or the medicine that we know now, was more about conquering. And that's why we're in the problem that we're at as well, with pharmaceuticals and pollution. All of that is because of the development without consciousness of the sacredness of all of life form. So.
Well, and Joan, that's true. And I think it's also really important to accept the fact that that is the nature of creation, is that we cycle away from our grand central sun, Earth does, and goes deeper and deeper into space, away from our greater light. And then we come back, and so we're in an ascension now. Mm-hmm. So there's great hope. It's called the Yuga Cycles, is one of the terms. And it's this 25,000 year cycle, and it has to do with, again, the sacred geometry, because we do this all the time in these circles, and they are, as you were saying, Elaine, they are spiral. It's all spiral dynamics that's working together. It's just that we compress it. We don't see the interconnectedness in the space, but it's happening there. And this yantra in and of itself represents, all the points represent the 64 codons in our DNA. And we've got, Greg Braden, who's now, decoding with his work the DNA, again, a language. Mm-hmm. Each of the petals in the yantras represent creation, sustenance, and destruction, which are written about mythologically with Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. So we take those and we can utilize our arms as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, in that we are that yantra. And you were talking about the toroidal sphere. We breathe into that core of who we are and breathe it up, and we open, we become the toroidal sphere of influence of what comes inside of us. And I love what you said, Elaine, about the colors, because that's so important. We must embody the density as well as the light. Otherwise, we stay separate from each other and we don't get into the magnitude of our heart. And each yantra has, in the very center of it, is the Bindu, the dot, and that's us. We are that creator. You spoke of that. And that is us, in us, with us, and that's what we're doing, is interacting. And so, I hope we answered the question about the spiral. We're all breathing in and breathing out, and that is part of that spiral dynamic. And one more thing I want to say is, creating harmony in the world is how we then tune into our inner compass. What is it that brings me joy, that opens my light and expands my light on all levels within me? Meaning I'm grounded, I'm also light, I'm both of those things, I'm all of those things. And we open up, and that's basically what the flower of life represents. And so I do this work with Braveheart Women, which is about opening up that flower of life inside of us with the physiology. And each of us, as we join together and we share these different aspects, then we're giving a broader spectrum, because I can't know what any of you know, and you can't know. Even if we're standing right next to each other, we are seeing things from such a different perspective all the time, and that's the beauty of harmony, is that we create that orchestra, yet we've come to think we need to be alike, and it's in the differences.
Yes.
Well, I think what both of you are saying is really beautiful for what Compassionate Women and Girls represents, and the charter, is that to expand our consciousness, we've been taught that there's good and bad, good and evil, and to acknowledge that it's a flow of life that we're in, and just to be aware of that and aware of how that works in our own bodies. And so what I'm really hearing from both of you are two different angles of how we can experience our own being, and the importance of grounding and also opening. So we're not only grounding with earth, but we're opening to the universe and acknowledging the universe within us. And I loved what you said, Elaine, about the power of influence. What did you call it?
Sphere of influence. Sphere of influence.
Sphere of influence. That's beautiful. Could you expand a little bit more on that, please?
Well, we have experiences all the time where we're feeling energy, but many people, and what I try to do is help people understand, what is it you feel? Not what you think, but what you feel. So many times we will feel something when we walk into a place. Let's say we could feel, gee, this doesn't feel quite right. Something feels wrong. Maybe my body is responding in a icky way for whatever reason. Well, you're walking into the energy of what has occurred maybe in a few moments before, or historically in a place. And so when we can be truly grounded and have our sphere of influence literally intersect the earth, we're actually healing the earth as we move through it, because it's humans who have done the damage. Animals have not done the damage. Plants have not done the damage. Humans have. So it's in this recognizing of this, and rather than battling against it, bringing a higher vibration there. So it starts to collectively, by laws of physics, to bring a different awareness out of the realm of where negativity is dominant. So, but I want to make a correction here. There is no such thing as negative energy. There is low frequency energy. So if someone feels deprived of oxygen, of food, their body is going to go into this motion of reactive. So we need to learn how to help ourselves not be reactive, but responsive, which is a very different thing entirely. But I also want to just briefly say that geometry has been employed in architecture, in cities designs, in many different things that we have maybe not been aware of, that help to facilitate a movement of energy within individuals, and within civilizations. So it is used in ways that most people are not even aware of.
Well, Elaine, I want to clarify, with electricity, there's positive and negative. So you're not referring.
But I'm speaking about an emotion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, there's positive and negative. Positive energy, there's a neutral point that creates what's called a current. Without those poles of energy, that's a different thing entirely.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thank you. Many people refer to incidences or individuals as negative.
Yeah.
The individual themselves is not negative, their behavior is.
Yes.
So it helps us to reframe that a little bit differently.
Yeah, thank you.
Being grounded, and like what Brenda's saying, when we understand that part within ourselves that actually gives us innate power, not force, but power, then we can become benevolent beings in our world. So we often equate erroneously, we make synonymous power and force, and they're not the same at all. So a power is a very powerful presence. Love is a power. It is not a force. It is not even an emotion. It is what animates everything on the planet and holds everything together.
I'm really touched by what both of you are saying, because what I've been really aware of, but I haven't been able to put like a finger on, is that as more and more women become empowered, that there's a very different type of power from the typical like masculine aspect of power as compared to the feminine. Even though we have masculine and feminine aspects within us, but that there's a new form of power that we're getting an awareness of. And it feels very much what both of you are talking about. We have like 5 more minutes. I can't believe it went by this fast, but I'm wondering if both of you could share about that this seems very much about why we're promoting the SDG 18, that this is the like an element that can really help people really work with that source of influence, that power that comes from the inside out and is not trying to take power.
Well, if I can say real quickly, in the human design, women have an innate power, not that we own, but has been given to us as a gift of creation to bring life forth. That is a power that we cannot even begin to comprehend the enormity of what that takes physiologically, spiritually, emotionally. And that power is a gift to us, that we then have this experience of what our physiology is capable of doing. And therefore our heart and our compassion is capable of nurturing and sharing. So that power is not an authority. It is a gift.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Brenda, do you want to sum up what you've been talking about?
Well, for me, just the basic, physics of the yantra show where we use force. If we take a look at this is the feminine. Recognize what it looks like? It looks like the uterus. It's it's the form of that. This is the masculine. So these are the Shiva and Shakti energies. If either one of them force, or force, there's no coming together, the breathing in and breathing out. And if you recognize that that center is the heart of our earth livelihood here, what our life gives us, then it's about receiving and giving, both of these working together and getting out of the brain that goes into defensive, reactive mode because it doesn't understand. When we get in our center, all we do is come from that center. And then this becomes not only something that's 3-dimensional, but becomes more than that. We're moving into 4th, 5th, and beyond dimensions, meaning we're becoming aware of that consciousness. So when we breathe into that and we let go, we keep letting go of what our mind wants to propel forward from the past. Dr. Bruce Lipton says that if we are in our heads thinking everything through, then we're in our past and we're in our future and we're not present. So it's about really coming into that ownership of the sacred masculine and feminine and feeling it. And not only feeling it, yet being it.
Yeah, what I'm viscerally feeling is an expansion around my chest, in my chest area, and that it just feels really expanded. Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense with what you're saying. Elaine, did you have any final?
Well, I think that what's beautiful, and I want to thank you, Joan, for inviting us to participate in this, because what's happening now in terms of ancient prophecies is we're coming back into the awareness of what it means to be human beings. I mean, truly, if we understand that this earth was created from tens of thousands of millions of years, and so much effort was taken by creation to make it hospitable for us to live here. So there is so much that we have to understand so that we can begin to stop fighting ourselves and fighting one another. I mean, we have no idea what we're capable of when we finally get to a sense of balance and therefore peace within ourselves. And then what we are capable of bringing into the world and creating after that.
Thank you. Yes, I think we really are at a tipping point, and I've felt very strongly, without having an understanding, that there's a significant crossroads in the year 2020. We have about 2 more minutes. Do each of you want to share like a minute? I know this could be a whole subject in it, but I'm wondering if either one of you want to respond about that.
Well, go ahead, Brenda, since I was just speaking.
Well, I was just going to say, pay attention to what numbers mean to you and how they show up. 2020, of course, we know is about clear vision. And then there's many things that are coming together. There's astronomical things taking place in the cosmos that have created this. So remembering that we are bigger than our own selves. We've come here, as Elaine said, we're all healers. We're here to heal what's occurred. So start with ourselves and check into numbers, what they feel for you. It is another subject, and we didn't touch on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Elaine?
Well, I think that, from the ancient indigenous people that knew that this was going to be a very pivotal time for humanity's growth, then we really begin to understand that compassion is something that we offer to ourselves so that we can share it with others. And certainly we have had great compassion given to us by creation, by Mother Earth, is constantly giving. And we have been foolish enough to think that giving doesn't need to be reciprocal. It needs to be reciprocal so that we can look to the ancient wisdom that is bringing us back into balance. And sacred geometry is one way to help us do that. Very important way.
Thank you. And so thank you both. This has just been amazing. We could have gone on, and we will have an after party from 9 to 9:30 where it's going to open up to everyone. And so please stay on the line and you can write questions or chat. And we want to thank Sandy again and for this amazing opportunity to host this call, and we want to give thanks to Zoom for making this possible. And we're always grateful to everyone's donations, so any kind of monetary support is greatly appreciated and helps us survive. And we can continue this conversation, and if people want to get in touch with both Elaine or Brenda, they can do that. Like our page on Facebook, it's V2020, and if you have questions, you can write on there, and we'll keep the conversation going, which is always exciting. And we invite any of you, if you're interested in becoming an ambassador with the Charter of Women and Girls, we would love to have you be a part of that. And Sandy is our leader for that. And we also have a reminder for inviting young people to our next Gen Task Force. And what else? Oh, and we're going to the Parliament of World Religions, which is really exciting. That's in November this year in Toronto. And we are conducting a workshop. We're also doing a sacred water ceremony, and we're trying to get people to participate all over the world in honoring our sacred water. You can find out more about that. And you can do that through Women and Girls at charterforcompassion.org. And for more information about these and other programs for the Charter, you can visit www.charterforcompassion.org. And we bless you all. And our next call will be on 10/10, which is exciting. So we really want to hear from you. And thank you again, Elaine and Brenda. Please stay on the call. And this is exciting. So thank you.
And to you, Joan, while I am bringing everybody into the call now, and if you just hang on one by one, and slowly and surely you will all be brought into our call. Just a slow process.
Yeah. And we just want to ask, if you do, since we only have a half an hour, that you really try and limit your question or your response, just so everyone can have a turn. So thank you.
And to you, Joan, thank you for first holding the vision for what Vision 2020 could possibly be, getting out of its way for what it wants to be, and for anchoring this amazing conversation. We've done a lot of these calls from reaction to response to our calls with grandmother Flor de Mayo. I never seem to be surprised. I am so amazed and surprised by how much I've learned today and actually absorbed from this very deep and powerful conversation.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it's a deep affirmation about the SDG 18, don't you think?
Oh yeah, and yes, that's a project that is intended to remind ourselves that it is our personal advocacy and responsibility primary to solving every one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, we do have, let's see, I believe that everybody now is in our call. Let me just do one little bit of housekeeping here, because we want to hear from all of you. That, you know, this is Voices. Voices is a V, one of the V's within our V2020 series. So we want to, but I just want you to know, if you are calling in, you won't have this option, unfortunately, to see us all and us see you. But if you float your mouse to the top of your screen, or I believe it's on your screen at the top, it'll say speaker view or gallery view. Click on that so you get us all in one place. I call it Brady Bunch style, so we can all see one another. And if you don't want us to see, if you don't feel your camera best, in the lower left hand corner you'll see a stop video. So thank you all for being here. And boy, it's funny how our call kind of dwindles down from our original. I saw Mamrata from India was with us.
Yes.
Where are you? Oh gosh, there's
Down at the bottom there, yeah.
Down at the bottom.
There are a lot of views here. There's actually 2 or 3 pages of us. Okay.
Awesome.
We can't all see everybody at once because otherwise you'd be too tiny. So, Joan, please continue.
Okay, so would anyone like to start the conversation? Like, how do you feel about what we've had in conversation? This information that we've gotten. That for me, it just felt like a resonation that just kept expanding because it so aligned with an inner truth. So, any of you?
The first one to speak up is always the most compassionate. then it's everybody wants to talk at once. So.
Well, I would love to just say how grateful I am to be here. Both Elaine and Brenda, the information that you just, I feel like we just touched a very tip of something that I really would like to much, much more about. But what I'm coming away with is just a confirmation about our relationship with nature, which has always been very, very important to me. And also just the integration of, body, mind, heart, spirit, and earth that both of you have shared has been so beautiful. So thank you for opening the door, and I'm hoping that Sandy, at the end of the call, last time you did a beautiful job of summarizing, but that there might be some resources for us to really look a little deeper into this. So thank you.
Yeah, everybody will get a recording of the call. Normally we'll send links and different things mentioned. How do you put those things into letters onto a page, right? I was thinking about that. Oh my God, how am I supposed to articulate that? So I will allow Elaine and Brenda and Joan to send me whatever they think would be of support to you. Joan and I will get it out to you. The best we can. If not, listen to the recording again and again and again. And pass it,
Available on Amazon. Do they touch on this specifically, or are they on other things? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, my books are actually on other things, mostly about intuition and divine communication, which is really a part of geometry, because when your body is fully grounded, then your senses are much more acute. And so I talk about the healing work that I've done and receiving information, being able to share that information and seeing how it affected someone. So the books are, you can get them in print, an ebook version, also an audio version. And I'm working on a third book right now.
What is your third book about?
It's about really exploring. No, it's not a secret. But exploring the powers that are within us in a very gentle way, so that we can understand that we all have within us what will help to heal the planet.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I really feel like that's the direction that everyone is moving in, that we're coming to a place of, just acceptance and embracing, that everything is an aspect of ourselves. And Brenda, did you want to share something?
I put a couple things in the chat window, and so I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions. Rather than me talking, so.
Okay. Elaine, you might want to do that as well. If you put it in the chat window, that would be helpful for people. How many of you are coming to the Parliament of World Religions in November to Toronto? And so Sheila, I see you, and Susan, great.
By the way, I've muted most all of you because we were getting a little background noise. So
yeah, I'm still hearing it.
I know. I'm somebody, and there's somebody perhaps on a call that you might want to mute yourself.
Yeah, that's weird.
The Parliament of the World's Religions is the world's largest conference of faith traditions, social activism through the lens of our faith traditions. 12,000 people come from over about 80 different countries around the world. It's an extraordinary event, and we are hosting the Women and Girls sector are one of the co-hosts of an anchoring gathering called, Brenda, all of a sudden, Alchemy of Women's Collective Wisdom and Power. I was looking at Brenda for helping me with that, but I pulled it out. And so because not everyone can come to our gathering in the morning of the opening of the ceremony to anchor who we are and to prepare us for the dynamics ahead, we're inviting people to host circles where they are. And so we'll be getting information about that. I just wanted to drop in on what the Parliament is. It's an experiment every 3 or 4 years. It is around the world. It's in Toronto. And if you're interested, you can reach out and we'll send you information about it.
So I will say something I just posted in the chat window. We have some Braveheart women on our call today, and what I referred to them is 10 years ago, Dr. Ellie Drake created an organization called Braveheart Women, and we've been working around the world, and we work with sacred geometry within our bodies and how it is that we tune into the sacred feminine through the oxytocin breath and many other tools. So we're having our 10-year conference in November right after the Parliament. So I'm actually coming home from the Parliament for a day and then flying out to Arizona the next day. And so we are reinventing ourselves in different ways, from Braveheart Women to Braveheart Sisters, and integrating ourselves and utilizing the sacred geometry. And actually, sacred geometry was what made me say, I'm there, because I saw this banner. It was a huge banner in LA the first year that I went, and I saw the Flower of Life. And it was like, oh, there's something going on here that on the surface didn't look like what was going on. And it still doesn't, because we do this work in such beauty with such grace. And, you know, Joan and Sandy and others here have experienced that, and it's powerful. And we are releasing trauma from our bodies and intercollectively with other women worldwide. So I just want to share that, because it's all about sacred geometry within ourselves.
I'm so glad that you brought that back up, Brenda, because it dawned on me. It was learning about Braveheart Women and doing the course myself and having you speak about it on our call. We actually did a dance your butts off, BTS. And we literally were dancing. I think I ran into a wall. I was so into it. I did actually, didn't I? That it was the most comprehensive understanding and experience that I had. It was my first. It was my first experience really hearing about and understanding and moving through sacred geometry, and at a very, of course, high, basic, high level understanding of it. And then it was listening to Elaine's Empower Radio call too, that just sort of made it all make sense to me in another way. And now today is just another dimension of that. So the more we hear about this, and you can't hear enough, right? There's no way we can all hear enough about this. But thank you for showing us who we are, or who we could be, or that we, as Grandmother Flor de Mayo says, we hosted her on a series of calls, and I'll never forget, she says, we don't know who we are. We're not who we think we are. And maybe Elaine, you can speak about that. We're not who we think we are, even though we'd like to think we are, and we can have as much of an understanding of how we're made up and how things in our body and our mind and our connection and the patterns in the planet and the universe. But yeah, perhaps you can touch on that, Elaine. You're muted. Unmute you. Okay, start over again.
One of the things that we need to think about is that we have had many cultural layers on us that prevent us from remembering who we are. Not necessarily learning who we are, but remembering who we are. Because we always have this quickening within us. You might call it this little zing that runs up your spine, or as Joan was saying, there was at a certain point after Brenda was speaking, she felt her heart just open up. There's this resonance that happens, and it is by the laws of physics. So it happens because they're immutable laws. An immutable law is something that is designed into the existence. So when we begin to understand that, and especially with a great deal of compassion, when we understand that layer upon layer of culture, and how we think of ourselves as women, how we think of ourselves if we have a particular denomination we espouse to, our ethnicity, our age, our family's constellation, are you single, are you married, are you divorced, are you widowed, all of these things make up our consciousness of who we think we are. But we are so much broader than that. So I believe that all of this information is helping us to understand how to really step into this beautiful power of who we are, so that we can truly step away from the challenges of patriarchy, and also with compassion for men, because so many men have been forced into behaving in ways that were against their nature. So we have to remember we are one species, and we cannot exist without another. And without this, if we're not able to hold our genetic structure, our genome, which is geometry, we are like any other species on this planet, we can become extinct. Mm-hmm. And we have this arrogance of mind of thinking that we are somehow superior. But we have less than superior thinking often, and certainly behaviors. Yeah. So when we learn how to, at the very least, when you're grounded enough, you can pause. You can pause long enough to look at what's happening and respond rather than react. Think about, is this something that we want to engage, or something that we just need to let move through us and learn about, rather than holding on to the wounds that we often hold on to so dearly, and then define our lives by those wounds.
Thank you, Elaine. You've mentioned reaction to response several times, and I really want to invite people to go onto the website. It's a brilliant series, and you can just go through, listen to them all, or see which one calls out to you and go on there and listen to it. It's wonderful. I'm not thinking of her name. I love her. We were just talking about her yesterday. Sandy, what
Lisa Berkeley?
Yes, Lisa Berkeley. She's an amazing human being. And the other thing that I really want to mention to people about considering becoming an ambassador is I have experienced such personal growth from being involved in this. And last night, Brenda and I were both at the local Sacramento of United State of Women. And there is a movement happening, and it's inclusive, and it's beautiful, and it's powerful and amazing. And you get so ignited in the awareness that we are change makers, and we're coming together because our hearts are making us we're awakening that we know that we're better than this, and that we are returning to an awareness of humankind, that we're one. I think we've had an awareness of a lot of division and separateness, and so even just doing the DNA journey and recognizing that we have so many aspects on the globe, that the world is our home, and we have to stop dividing as a negative, that there's many aspects that we can honor and celebrate, the different cultures. There's so much beauty to learn from that, and this really ignites that and makes us way more excited. It's supposed to be fun. You know, we're supposed to be having fun here. So
yeah, I'd like to just touch in on that, and I'm really glad you did, because I'm glad that you mentioned the reaction to response, and also
yes.
to Lisa for producing that, and in the spirit that you're producing V2020. And that series came, literally was birthed on November 9th, 2016, what we call the events of 11/9. And because there was so much disempowerment and sense of fear and concern, and just really just a new understanding of the world, right after the United States election, that the Charter for Compassion actually received 2,500 emails within a few days after that. What should we do? Where would we go from here? What kind of program can we bring? Basically, what's going on? And the women and girls were like, we got this. And we did have a couple of calls where, for our ambassadors, where we were able to empty. We did provide the space for women and men to share, you know, what was on their heart and where their fear was at. But then we put a stop after the second call, and we said, okay, now it's time for us to accept our role and our personal responsibility and our collective responsibility to take this out into the world. The ambassador program has proven that that SDG 18, that when we take that out into the world, so we all know this stuff. I'm going to guess that everybody on this call subscribes to what you just said, Joan. I'm just going to take a gander and just say, let me just have a show of hands for everybody who believes that and lives that here on this call, right? Hands are up. What good is it if it's just us, right? Now I'm preaching to the choir. And the ambassadorhood gives us all an opportunity. We don't really need the ambassadorhood, but it does help and accelerate, because it does put us into different places. But gives us the opportunity to be the voice of that to a critical mass. That's what we can do here with Zoom calls. That's what our ambassadorship does. It gives our ambassadors what we have to offer. Brenda, did you want to say something?
I wanted to ask if you could tell people, Sandy, how they could access some of the YouTubes and things that we've done in the past, so that they could then reap the benefits and get to know more. And then I have a comment also about the Yantra sacred geometry, if there are no questions about that specifically.
Absolutely. You will all get a link to the Charter for Compassion Women and Girls sector, which I believe you probably may already have. And if you don't, go to charterforcompassion.org under Partners Women. It'll take you right there. And then you can, play around. But I'll send you a direct link to the reaction to response, grandmother Flor de Mayo, and any other calls that we've had that will be of interest to you or that we have done and that are posted on the website. We also have, under the Charter for Compassion, has a YouTube channel. So you can find us there under Women and Girls.
And it looks like Susan, did you raise your hand?
Thank you, Mary.
I did. I had a question for the speakers today. I get the truth about remembering who you are, remembering who I am, and, you know, connecting body with spiritual. I get how it's all one with everyone and with the whole planet. What role does transformation have in this? Because it sounds, I hear you saying, remember who you are. You are an eternal being, an unchanging being. What about transformation? And Brenda mentioned we created history. We created time. And yet we are eternal. And so there's so much that we want to do, that we want to change, that we want to do together and change together in order to reach this goal of unity and compassion together. And so how would you, within the ideas you're speaking of, how would you create a link between this eternal self and transformation?
If I could say, well, transformation is change. It's synonymous. And what comes to mind as you're asking this question, Susan, is I had the great blessing of being with some Quechuan elders in Peru. And this sweet gentleman who was in his 80s at the time, he said, every human is here for exactly the same purpose. We are here to be happy. We are here to use and be the love that we are, and we're here to take action. So that means that we have this beautiful triangular understanding of we already are, that when we feel happy, when we feel content, when we have joy, that's a good barometer of how we're doing. If we're unsettled, if we're angry, if we're fearful, then something is inherently out of balance. And when we understand that we are love, we are not the experience of love, we are love itself. And as a power. And then to take action to bring that love forward will continue that cycle to happen. You cannot be happy and using love and taking action without being happy and using love and taking action. It's a continuation. So a transformation is, I would rather use the term of like a metamorphosis, to emerging into who we actually are, to remembering who we are with clarity and beauty, and letting that be a new frame of reference. And then as another experience comes, we can have that as another frame of reference. Because there's so many aspects of our human psyche and history that needs to be balanced. And I would just question one thing. We did not create time. We created our concept of time. But time is moving. It is energy moving. It is experience moving. So we did not create it, but we try to contextualize it in a linear fashion and then understand past, present, future potentials. But time is as Albert Einstein greatly postulated, that the fourth dimension is the dimension of time and space. And that is where our emotions reside. So it resides within time and space, and then therefore we often pigeonhole ourselves in an event, and then we become the victim of that event. And that's not necessary. I hope that answers your question.
That was a great explanation. I think, how do you feel about that, Susan? Does that resonate for you?
I really love how she, how Elaine has this scientific background that she brings to her thoughts, and because I believe in the truth of a lot of the science that that our species has discovered, and so I find that helpful.
Going back to the medicine wheels really quickly, all sciences came from the medicine wheels. Every science that exists. So that's a whole other big topic.
And also, I appreciated that moment in time that you mentioned, Elaine, about how we pigeonhole ourselves. And I often complain about how others will pigeonhole other people, how some people will pigeonhole other people. And it's just so common. It becomes a stereotype. Someone will say that person is blah, blah, blah. And and yet I hadn't thought too much about how I do that to myself.
Well, common is not synonymous with normal. You made it synonymous with normal, but it is not. Common just means it happens repeatedly. Normal is a place of balance.
Brenda, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, so transformation, to me, in what's called the stages of evolution, relates to the fifth chakra, to our voice. And if we're shut off on one end or the other, then what are we speaking? Are we regurgitating that which is someone else's, or are we really speaking from within our own selves? And so there's a mucosis actually in the body, in the vagina, that matches the mucosis in the throat. And when we drop into the self-remembering stage of evolution, which is the second chakra, which is the creation within our body, first the creation takes place with ourselves, a relationship with ourselves. And so we must honor and love ourselves. And then from that love, we form relationship with another. And so from that, we have a resonance that rises within and speaks from that resonant voice, rather than a voice that is from the head that's coming down and trying to interpret all these different thoughts that come in through the wavelengths from around us. Instead, we're coming from within us. And so we're truly in that toroidal sphere of creation. So it's where we do the work within our bodies. We release trauma from the cells, because the cells carry post-traumatic stress. And so we must clear that stress out of the cells of the body. And in the work of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, the next wave of consciousness is the cells. And that's what Bruce Lipton's work is about. Also, Dr. Bruce Lipton's work with the imaginal cells. And so it's really pretty phenomenal work that's taking place within many places throughout the world. And so settling down inside ourselves and cleaning that up within ourselves is what frees us. And I call that caring for the human rather than being a part of the human race.
Brenda, a couple of days ago, everybody, I was talking to Brenda, a couple of weeks ago, actually, I was talking to Brenda, and I was kind of spinning out, I was bouncing off the walls. I got a lot going on in my personal life, who doesn't? And I said, I feel like I'm vibrating, and not in a good way, yeah? And Brenda's simple, gracefully, just in the same cadence she's speaking here. Well, Sandy, that's just your cells looking for direction from you. Oh, that's right. I forgot. I'm the captain in charge here. Every time, and by the way, some of you, my best friend from, my best friend from, gosh, 40, we're not that old, 40-something years, knows. Yeah, I've been kind of in that state. I've been at that lower vibration. And boy, if it weren't for that simple reminder, that just brings me back.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everybody in order, right? Back in order, ship shape. I just have to point out somebody on our call who's so quietly and gracefully working on the background, and we couldn't function, I don't think, without her. And that's Betsy, otherwise AKA Mary, who's showing up on your screen. This is our director for outreach and relationship and outreach, and she's the one putting in all of the links for you all. So you can grab them here too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But she's not only doing all this background work, she's making compliments. So Susan, she's doing it all.
Well, you guys, we're at 9:30. This was awesome. Thank you so much, Brenda and Elaine and Sandy, all of you. Thank you for tuning in, and we'd love your suggestions. V2020 is really committed to this kind of support in expanding our minds and hearts and beings. So we are all playing a part in this creative movement of change. So thank you all, and bless you, and have an amazing day today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.